Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SAG-AFTRA podcast. I'm Duncan Crabtree-Ireland, SAG-AFTRA National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator. So this is something we rarely do, but we are back with Daisy Wu, our guest from the last episode, because that conversation was going so well and so long, we realized it needed to be split into 2 episodes. So this is the continuation of our conversation with Daisy. She is a senior partner at the Gersh Agency and has been representing talent since 2009. And so Daisy, we're just going to jump right back into the conversation and continue where we left off, if that works for you.
That sounds great.
For you as an agent, especially with so many actors now sort of putting together their economic lives and their career from different parts of the industry, do you find that you sort of represent them for everything? So for example, if you have an actor who's making commercial deals or maybe doing an endorsement deal, who's also doing a streaming series, who's also maybe wants to host a podcast, let's say, or wants to do an audiobook or whatever, do you do that all for them, or do you have colleagues within the firm, within the agency who do that, or how does that work?
We do have at my agency, we have various divisions and departments where that someone can handle, as you said, a book deal. Someone can do a branding and endorsement deal. And so I am very fortunate to have colleagues who are kind of subject matter experts in these various fields. But I also think that what a positive thing that's coming out of just these various income streams, there used to be, I think, an adage where it was like, oh, you know what, as an actor, you should stay in your lane. And if you want to be taken seriously as an actor, you do not need to have an alcohol product. You can't be a host of a television show. You can't be writing a book, all of that. And I think the sort of bias against that is starting to fade, where people can understand that you can be a multi-hyphenate, you can be successful in many ventures and have that, rather than detract, have that enhance kind of what you do as a core artist and as an actor. Look, there does come a point where you do see sometimes examples of people where you go, okay, are you more of a brand now than you are as an actor? So I'm not saying that there aren't limits to how perception might be changed depending on how far-reaching we're talking about, where someone is so ubiquitous, then, does the audience then struggle to see them solely as an actor and not think of them as a business person, as an entrepreneur? Possibly. But I think for the most part, there is a wider acceptance of people just being able to pivot and do different things, yet still kind of maintaining and protecting their core kind of talent business, so to speak.
Right. But I mean, would you agree that at least as far as the old school, dichotomy between film and television, that's pretty much gone. That's gone. Right?
It's gone.
Because whether it's Nicole Kidman, Harrison Ford, Helen Mirren, I could just keep going, that's just not a thing anymore. So this is maybe an offshoot of that to a certain extent. Yeah.
I mean, I think when I started out, as I said, back in the day, we had different divisions where there was a feature talent and a TV talent, and the two departments didn't really talk as much. I mean, so it is quite amazing now where it's so fluid. There is no distinct line. People can go back and forth because I also think we just consume differently now, right? Everyone who's of a younger generation, they're not sitting in the theaters anymore. They're not sitting and watching on their TVs. They're watching on their phones. They're watching on iPads. It doesn't matter. They will watch wherever is convenient and makes sense for them. So why are we making that distinction one way or another?
Yeah, and I can think of at least one example of a new streaming series where the sort of lead actor, who is also the creator and I think maybe the showrunner of that show, also is a fairly successful TikToker and is using that sort of cross-platform to heavily promote the show on the streaming platform. Yeah. So it's, there are these synergies that I think develop. And like you said, if you can stay focused on your core as an actor, your core as a performer, then having those other avenues is both a way of being resilient in hard times and also perhaps a way of promoting it. And of course, we've seen that same crossover from several prominent recording artists who've moved into primarily being, or at least equally being, known as actors. And I think I talked to one of them recently who said to me that and actually had said publicly this as well, that they felt that there was a very different vibe to being part of the actor community and doing their acting work as opposed to their work in the music community. So it's an interesting challenge. And as an agent, I guess you just have to be able to encompass all of that and pivot and work with their respective management teams and whatever to help make that happen.
And also, I think it depends on the individual actor, because we certainly all have clients who are more traditional in the sense that say, you know what, I just want to focus on this. I just want to focus on being an actor. I don't need to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to do all these other things. And that's fine. And then there are other actors who want to embrace the sort of the opportunity and the multi-hyphenate aspect of it. So I think so much of that, again, about the agent-actor relationship is so individual and unique. There's no one-size-fits-all representation because different people want different things and they want to go about it in a different way. So that's where you really have to know and be able to have these kind of open conversations.
I also want to ask you about the connection between agencies and us as the union, SAG-AFTRA as the union. And my colleague, Beth Millman, who you know well, was just telling me, what a great collaboration there is with you particularly. But I wonder if, even generalizing that more for agents in general, how do agents work with the union and what sort of things do we collaborate on that can work to the benefit of your clients and our members?
And thank you for the shout out to Beth, who's amazing, and we love her dearly. She's such an ally and an advocate for our clients. I think, look, there's the very sort of obvious situation when there's a problem on set. There's a problem with how something is happening. Actors aren't being treated a certain way. Rules are not being observed. So it's so beneficial to be able to call on the union and say, look, not only are we as the individual actor, the individual agency complaining, but we really love the weight of SAG-AFTRA behind us to kind of, reach out to the studio and say, that's not appropriate, or this needs to be fixed, this needs to be addressed. Where I find it particularly helpful is even on a different level, where sometimes I'll see a trend of something where studios are trying to do something in a deal, or I'll see something on production side where I'll go, I'm not sure I want to sound the alarm about that yet, but I kind of want to run this by SAG and use them as a sounding board of, hey, have you seen this in other circumstances? Is this something the other studios are doing? Have you come across this issue before? If we did talk about this, if we did take the next step, what would be SAG's position on it? Because not every situation, truthfully, we want to get SAG involved immediately, but there could be times where we just sort of keep each other informed, talk things through, and keep an eye on something. And I find, especially in that circumstance, it's so incredibly valuable because we will see something that gives us pause, but is it something we should be concerned about? Let's talk to SAG just even in an informal way and get their thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, my observation is the insight that we gain from agents is invaluable in our negotiation process, and the early warnings we get during the term of the contract from the exact sort of thing you're talking about is so helpful. And one of the things that's funny is people often say to me, well, the companies all know what they're doing. But the thing is, they really are very competitive with each other. So outside of certain specific things, a lot of times they do not know very clearly what others are doing or how much money people are spending in this or that or that. Sometimes we have the most comprehensive data about what they're all doing because we see it all from our end, just like you see it from all of your clients on your end. And so I think it can be a really incredibly valuable and important collaboration between agents and us as the union, because with the information you can share with us and our ability to aggregate it across the entirety of the union entertainment industry that we're involved in, it gives us that ability to try to confront problems before they become entrenched practices in the industry.
Right.
And it is a lot easier to stop things from happening if they aren't really, fully embedded and
all of a sudden studio policy. That's the worst when you're in a deal and they go, sorry, it's policy across the board.
That is funny. During our negotiations in 2023, that was one of the things that we obviously covered a lot of topics in that negotiation, but with AI, one of the things so many agents told us, and lawyers and talent, including agents for like the very top level A-listers, if you want to call them that, said, with the AI stuff, we can't get the studios to meaningfully engage with us on this stuff.
To even have a conversation. Yeah.
And then they said to us, the only way this is going to happen is if you all do it. And so that's one of the many reasons why that was such a huge priority then and remains a priority now. But there are times when all of us working together really provide the counterpoint, because sometimes we forget it, but these are massive, like multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations that we're going up against. And it requires all of us working together to be able to counterbalance that economic power, I feel.
100%.
So I know I've taken up so much of your time, but I do want to ask you, from your point of view, like, what's your perspective on where the industry is right now? And, what do you think about the current state of the entertainment business, and where do you think it's headed? Easy question, right?
Look, it is. It's certainly the business as it is now versus when I started, as I said, 25 years ago. It's quite different. It is a hard landscape out there, but hopefully, as we've finally emerging from the pandemic, the two strikes, look, we are dealing with corporate consolidation. We're dealing with fractured viewership. That remains, and that's going to stay. So even after we kind of get out from under the umbrella of the pandemic and the strikes, I just think we have to be very focused and specific as representatives in terms of really examining each and every opportunity. I don't want to say that we could afford to be more cavalier, let's say 10 or 15 years ago, because the jobs were always going to be there. The actors were always going to work. And that's not an assumption that you can make anymore. There are a lot of terrific, amazing actors who have great bodies of work who are unemployed right now and who are available. And the buyers know that. So the thing that we come across, and this is more just a description of kind of the reality rather than trying to be negative, is that in a lot of these projects, the top line 1 or 2 people will get paid properly, let's say, according to quote, whatever that may be. And then everyone else, there will be a budget that is dictated for specific roles. And that budget is set. So even if you have an actor who has a significant quote that should be honored, and let's say 10 or 15 years ago, that would have been recognized, now the conversation is like, look, sure, we know that person made this much, but this is what we have. So either that works for you or it doesn't. And that is a tough conversation to have with an actor. Look, if you don't want to engage, that's fine, and we'll support you, but know that it's likely not a situation where they're going to come back around. They're going to find someone who will work for that number. So I think if that is the reality of the marketplace, it just kind of goes back to everything has to be there has to be so much more dialogue about the pros and cons and the process and what are we doing both on each end, both as an agent, are we being as transparent? Are we being as creative and thoughtful in terms of finding these job opportunities as we can be? And as an actor, are you holding up your end of the bargain? Are you maximizing every opportunity that comes your way, whether that be a meeting, whether that be an offer? Are you really considering this project fully and from a measured and informed way? Are you dismissing things too early? And let's even talk about self-tapes if we can, because self-tapes is just the new norm. We have a lot of clients who like the situation because you can control the circumstances and you can tape it until you get it just right in your mind. And then we have actors who hate it because there's no in-person interaction and then you're literally making creative choices with no guidance whatsoever.
And you're wondering if it's being watched.
Right. Does it just go into the black void? But
right.
This genie is not going back in the bottle, right?
No.
This is how we're proceeding. It's funny, I got into like a pseudo argument with a casting director, and this was even before the pandemic, which really then all bets are off in terms of self-tape because that was the only way actors were seen. And I had said to this person, I said, you are here in LA. Why don't you hold a session with actors who are in LA? How are you asking people in LA to self-tape? Like, that makes no sense. What are we doing here? And this person said, well, you have to understand it from our perspective. I have 3 producers, a filmmaker, studio people. We can all watch tapes when we can. And also, I can hold an in-person session and see 15 people in 3 hours, or I can ask for self-tapes and we can go through 60 of them in that same period. So there's an efficiency there and an ability. In this way, we get to see more actors than we typically would if we held in-person sessions. And look, I may not agree with every aspect of it, but I understand that reasoning. And so I try to explain that to actors that this is just kind of what it is. And you hopefully as an actor need to learn to adapt and brush up on those self-taping skills because that is an art in and of itself. I mean, this is very basic. And if I can share one thing with the members, please be off book. Please make interesting choices. These are, make sure the lighting works, make sure the audio works, because I see a lot of tapes where I go, gosh, that is not the best representation of this actor. And this is what is going to be the determining factor, at least, if not the job, but whether you move on to the next step. So you have to make sure that self-tape is the best version and representation that you can do. And those are really basics. And even if you're able to do that, you're still ahead of the game in terms of what else is out there. So
yeah, and that's such great advice. And it's fascinating because even during our negotiations in 23, there was a lot of discussion and debate amongst our committee members and our membership in general And the fact is, there are members who really love self-tapes, as you've said. There are others who really are not thrilled that that's become such a common mechanism. And of course, one of the ways we navigated that was by providing the right to request a virtual, interactive audition as opposed to a self-tape in each of these cases. It remains to be seen, and we're compiling some data on the question of what percentage of members actually want that or have taken advantage of that. And I'm sure that'll be informing our conversations as we come up on the next round of bargaining. But to another point you made about being off book, there's a specific rule that says that they cannot. If they tell you have to memorize the sides, then that is a paid audition and they have to pay you for it. So no casting director, no producer, unless they're prepared to pay people for auditioning, should be telling people that. So that's a creative choice that the actor has to make. But of course, we've also heard from actors who say, even with that prohibition, a lot of us are going to always memorize and be off book because we feel it's the best way to present ourselves. So it's a very interesting conundrum to address.
It is. And look, and I understand that coming out of the SAG deal that we have done the best that we can in terms of managing that process because it is very unwieldy and it's so much work for an actor to do all of this and then not get the job. I understand that. But I think from our perspective, the practical reality is that this is how people are being evaluated. So even if they specifically tell you that you don't need to know your lines, the fact is it is going to affect the performance if you are not off book, you're looking down, grabbing the lines, versus, by the way, there are other actors who will be off book and you are being judged against them. So you have to ask yourself, even if it is not actually required, even though it's going to take more work on my part, do I want to be competitive and do I want to, again, showcase my performance in the best light? Then that is a conversation. In terms of the Zoom auditions, yes, they always offer that option, but the problem is that there are limited slots. So we do have a number of clients who go, hey, immediately, I would love to get a Zoom audition, but those slots fill up so quickly that oftentimes while it is provided, there's just, there's only...
So you find there's more demand for those than there is availability?
I do.
In your experience?
I do. Again, this is pure anecdotally.
Sure.
I haven't actually polled or anything like that. But, I think a lot of the actors want to have the interaction, the ability to readjust, for someone to say, great, but would you do it this way instead? I think that's what we're all certainly missing from the self-taping now in your own home versus the actually going in and sitting across with a filmmaker, producer, casting director who can tell you if you're on track or not. And I think, interestingly enough, just even in a self-tape situation, and this is what I love about being an agent, without these self-tapes, when it was just traditionally people going into a room, I couldn't tell. I don't know what people are doing, right? I can only get feedback afterwards that someone was amazing in a meeting or someone did an amazing audition. But now we have the ability as well, just with the self-taping. We often see these things first and you'll go, oh, okay. Sometimes people will surprise me and you'll go, gosh, this person is so good that they did the scene in such a way that I didn't anticipate. And that's actually a great choice. It's still true to the script, but it's different than what maybe like a very obvious choice would have been. On the flip side, sometimes I watch tapes and I go, I think this person is better than what I see on this tape. And before I send this along, I'd like the person to take another shot. And again, it's hard because I'm not the creative decision maker. And it's certainly just one opinion, but sometimes we'll just give an adjustment and hope that's in line with what they're looking for. You try to get as much information as you can. But again, as you know,
I'm sure your clients appreciate that because it is one of the ironies of self-tapes that acting is almost, with rare exceptions, is inherently a collaborative medium of work. And then to feel so isolated when you're doing the auditions that are going to potentially secure that work for you. So I would imagine that your clients really appreciate the fact that you take the time to do that and share your thoughts with them.
Right. And I hear and often complain, and I understand this completely, that often the self-tape process feels like you're blindfolded and you're shooting a dart at some board that you can't even see. So, and then how are you possibly being set up for success in that kind of situation? How can you make the interesting choices when literally these are choices that are not informed by anything but other than an educated guess based on sides? And oftentimes scripts are confidential. You don't even get them. So it's a struggle that we feel as well. How is this process the most conducive to not only an actor getting a job, right? Which again is the end goal, but an actor making a great impression, because we always say to clients, look, even if you don't get the job, if you make an impression where that filmmaker, where that studio exec, that casting director goes, gosh, that person's not right, but really interesting, and we should keep that person in mind for the next project. I mean, that's the second best goal and almost as important as getting the ultimate project. So how do you still accomplish that in a process that doesn't quite allow for the best version of someone to be seen?
So Daisy, there's this phenomenon that I've heard of, and I really want to ask you about it because I don't know if it's apocryphal or if it's true, which is that a lot of times when an actor sort of hits a big break, that they will immediately have this reaction, I should change my agent, I should change my representation. And I'm assuming that if that is true, that people have this idea that somehow that's necessary in order to continue their career trajectory of success. Is that a real thing? And if so, do you have any thoughts on it?
That is a real thing. And I think it depends on the situation. I think sometimes there's a circumstance where someone books a job they perceive to be a big break that will open doors. And sometimes that is true, that you need a change in agency representation. You need a place that can that has more information, that has the infrastructure, that has the relationships at a higher level. Absolutely. However, I see a lot of situations where someone books a job where, you know what, the current agent is fully able to handle and adapt and continue to represent you passionately and faithfully, and that, if anything, they're being punished for doing a good job. And that
that's awful. That's got to feel terrible as an agent to have that happen.
It can be, but it's also, so I think as an actor, you have to ask, which of the two is this situation? Do I truly need a new agent because my relationship is no longer working and they cannot represent me to the fullest? Or do I have a knee-jerk reaction where I just feel like, oh, well, I can now jump ship and find a quote unquote bigger agency when the people who have brought you to this place have been doing a great job, and that relationship should continue. So there is a distinction between the two, and I think sometimes they're conflated. And that as an actor, it's important to really kind of examine and analyze like which situation you're in, and are you just moving to move, or are you truly moving because your current place doesn't serve you in the right way anymore?
Yeah, and maybe it ties in. I mean, I don't know, but to the extent that this happens, I wonder if, at least in some cases, it can tie in with that question of, mutual loyalty in a way where, if an agent has stood by you during, down times when they're not making any money because you're not booking any jobs for a while or whatever, and then you have that moment, it's a good chance to think about that, the sort of longer term relationship that you have with them. And like you said, if they have that skill set that you need, then why,
Then why are you why are you changing what is already a good thing and has been working? And I think that speaks to the very unique and personal relationship between an actor and an agent. It's a business relationship, right? But it's so intensely personal as way you are investing your career and your dreams with this person who is serving as your representative, literally. And I think a question on both sides, both as an agent and as an actor, is this person someone that you want to be in the trenches with during good and bad? Because when the days are good and the calls are incoming and someone has some heat on them, that's a great ride and it's fun and it's easy, so to speak. But what happens on the flip side, because every career has a valley in addition to the peaks. So when you are inevitably going to hit a valley where sometimes those calls are not coming in the same way, the opportunities are not as plentiful, is that person going to be the person that you will still trust, who will be have your back and be still working with you side by side? So those are just important things to think about, and loyalty in the right sense can also be meaningful.
I bet a lot of our listeners will be thinking about that as we continue this conversation. I will bet that when other agents hear this podcast, they will be saying, thank you for saying these things, Daisy, because we would love to be able to share this feedback. And I know that our members and others who will listen to this will benefit immensely from the guidance and just the insight that you've shared. I really appreciate you being so open and sharing all of that with us. I wish we had like another hour to keep talking because I feel like there's so much more. We will just have to have you back for another episode. But I just want to say thank you again for you giving us so much of your time today. And I have every confidence that our listeners will be listening with rapt attention to everything that you've said. So this has been Daisy Wu, who is, as I said at the beginning, a partner with the Gersh Agency. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real privilege to be here and to be able to chat with you. So
awesome. And for everyone, for all of our listeners, we will catch you on the next episode of the SAG-AFTRA podcast. The SAG-AFTRA podcast is produced and edited by Aaron Goddard and John Small. Supervising producers are Pamela Greenwald, Shira Reich, and Michael McNulty, with production and marketing support from Damon Romine, Jolico Conte, Delaney Howard, Margot Giordano, Joe Mulgado, May Wong. The podcast is hosted by yours truly, Duncan Crabtree Ireland.